Okay, start.
So, my name's Chris. I'm a scuba diver, avidly going underwater many years locally around the world. But one of my passions is actually going lobster hunting. And lobster hunting is always a challenge. Most people think about night diving at lobster hunting because they come out at night, but that's not a challenge for us. We want to go during the day when it's much tougher to get them, and they're in the holes. So I'm going to show you here about a legal lobster, a little bit bigger than a legal lobster. This is a molt that I add, and this one's about 1.5 pounds, give or take. But what I really want to show you is that this is a female, and these are the swimmerettes underneath the tail. They're swimmerettes, and they're actually longer ones on a female. And what they do is they actually protect the eggs. And another thing that you can tell about male and female, the difference between the two lobsters, is that the last, if you take a look at all of the legs, there's a point on the end of these, but the last one on actually a female has little clippers. And she goes over, and the male actually deposits sperm out there. She puts it on her belly around here. It's a sperm patch. She goes over and takes the actual sperm one by one, the little bits, and actually fertilizes her own eggs. So there's no insertion for the reproduction of this animal here. Now, one thing very common is that everybody thinks about lobsters having claws. There are no claws on California lobsters. Matter of fact, most of the lobsters in the world do not have claws, just the ones in Maine that I'm aware of. There are a few maybe somewhere else, but for the most part here, whatever else, I do a little bit of educational deals with schools and such. And the big thing that I tell all the kids is, if you take anything out of this, I want you to go home and tell your parents, California lobsters do not have claws.
Now,
Say it
Chris,
3 times.
tell me what a molt is.
A molt is actually a lobster of this size here is about maybe 7 to 8 years old. And they cannot grow like a snake. They have to shed their skin to actually go through the process of getting bigger. So they actually have a separation between their tail and their carapace. This is called a carapace. It separates, and the whole body of the actual lobster comes out, a complete replica. As a matter of fact, the eyeballs are actually still here clear, but their little black ones you can see are actually the eyeballs. And that's the only thing you can actually tell the difference between a lobster that is molted or not. Now this one I've shellacked it and preserved it so that I can use it as educational purposes. But if you look up close, there's no eyeball inside that. Right now it's clear. But otherwise it's exactly the same. And it comes out very soft. And it's very vulnerable to prey at the time, so it hides, and many times it does not eat for many days and maybe even a week or so. But the key on this is that they get harder, the shells get harder, and their defense is spines. This is called a spiny lobster. So you can see this is a spine, there's spines here, and there's very sharp ones here on the edge of the tails. And this is what their defense is against predators that want to eat them. So right now,
So you picked up that
molt.
that molt off the sand somewhere because it's
Correct.
after the lobster has shed it, it's just floating around on the sand.
Correct.
And it's a good thing to show other people
Yes,
what
it is.
lobsters look like.
And the difference is that you can tell a molt right away is because the tail is usually separated from the carapace, because that's how he gets out. Or she
Now, what
gets
do you
out.
eat in a restaurant?
99% of the time you're eating just the tail. Okay, this tail here is about maybe 6 to 8 ounces. It could be a little bit bigger, but for the most part, a pound lobster is about 40 to 45% of its total weight. So 1.5 pound lobster is about maybe about 3/4 of a pound, give or take.
And that's the meat inside.
That's the meat inside.
So then you cut it down the middle,
yes,
and you pull out the meat,
correct.
and you eat that and throw the shell away.
And the big thing on this is never boil a lobster. Always steam them. It comes out so much better. A legal lobster takes about 7 minutes to cook all the way through. Steaming like you do vegetables, where you actually have it up above the water in a pot. The steam comes up and cleans it and cooks it. Now, one of the things you'll notice is when you cook a lobster, this is pretty old here and it's shellacked and the sun has actually gotten to it a little bit, but they're bright red when they actually get cooked. Very bright red. And you can tell.
But you can also grill them on a barbecue.
Yes, you can. And you can tell because when it's completed the cooking process, when you cut the tails in half, let me put this guy down here usually. When you cut the tails in half, this direction on the belly, because it's the softer part, and you spread it apart, you take a look at the meat. If it's opaque, it's still undercooked. And if it's cooked properly, it's white all the way through. Okay, so that's that. And now the males, as you can see on this one, the swimmerets are very small. They only come out from here to here. Yet the females, if you look again, they're very long and they overlap, and that's where the actual eggs are protected underneath. And if we go out to the next
And what do you call the eggs on
the eggs are called roe, R-O-E, I believe.
And are they good to eat?
Some people love them. Some people really like them a lot. But we, as scuba divers, never want to touch a lobster that's got roe because there's thousands and thousands of babies, and that's what we want. We want them to actually grow and reproduce. So we do not harvest lobsters that have roe because they're usually having their process of reproduction during their off season. So
And what about the male lobsters? You try to preserve the really, really big ones because
Correct.
they have the greatest breeding capacity, right?
That's correct, but I've been hearing both stories on that. It sounds like some people say that the medium-sized ones actually are more active than the bigger ones because they're kind of lethargic and such. And the big one may go out and have a lot of product to go out to share with a female, but the problem is he walks around so slowly around. The ones that are, and you'll see some bigger ones I have here that I caught. The bigger ones could be as old as 50 to 70 years old. Those move around very slowly. The ones that are in the 30s to 40s, just like in a human being, the males are a little bit more active, and they get around and they can visit many females, is what I've been told.
They're the young super studs.
That's exactly it. Yes, they are. So there you go. So we're going to put this guy back so he doesn't break. I'm going to put him right here. And
We're going to look at some real live lobster.
now this is live lobsters. Now one thing you notice here is that I have an air pump pumping air inside. I have a cooler here and I have water inside, but the water is actually being aerated, and you'll also notice that I have jugs of ice in here. And this is fresh water, so I don't want it to actually contaminate the salt water. So this one's been melted. I put it in last night.
And it's keeping the water really cold.
And how I determine that is I have an infrared little gizmo here, and I push my little button on here, and I go in and I see this should be between 50 and 60 degrees. It's 52 degrees. And that's, if you look at that, 52 degrees just about, and that's perfect because they love to be between 50 and 60 degrees. Now, if I look at the ice itself, it comes in around 30-something degrees, 40 degrees, and that's great. But one thing is you go for the lobster, and you'll see he's a little bit warmer, not much, but about 53, and that's what they like. Now, this lobster here is about, probably 9 pounds.
And you keep him partly out of the water.
Correct. They will drown if they have just water with no aeration. But I found it's a lot easier when you move things around. Also, I have to cart this water from the Pacific Ocean. So one of the things I don't want to do is use a lot of water, and I also change the water every day to make sure that they keep fresh.
So you go down to the beach and you get more salt water, and you swap out the water to keep them fresh salt water.
Correct. Yes.
Can you put your hand down to that?
Yes.
For just a size perspective?
And you can see here he is alive. This is a he, and I'm going to go over. He's he's on his way here. You can see he actually has, that's a 9-pound lobster. Now, I usually return these guys, but this one here, if you can see, he's broken, a couple of his legs broke off and he was bleeding, so he will probably not survive in the wild. But what I do want to show you, and he may hit you a little bit, that's what's going to happen. You can see he's alive. But you can see here the swimmerets. This is a male. You can see now that the male has very small swimmerets, and his last leg is a point. It is not little clippers.
Yeah, I can see that.
And the one thing you want to keep your hand away from is his mouth, which is right here. And that mouth actually, whoa, you can see it. He is alive, yes. And something very interesting is if you notice the hair on his legs here, and that is actually telling you it's a really old lobster.
How old would you say this lobster is?
This guy's got to be 50 years old, plus or minus. Because I was told that a 10-pounder is about 60 years old.
That's great, Chris.
So this guy here is going to be eaten shortly during a football game tomorrow. We're going to eat his legs and maybe freeze his tail. But I do want to show you.
Put your hand next to his carapace.
Yeah, you can see here, this is a big lobster.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Now, this one here is a good-sized lobster. It's probably around a 2.5, 3-pounder. And this one here actually has all its legs. And that's what I try to do, is to try to catch them so that they're not hurt at all and they'll last longer for educational purposes. But look here now, can you see that, okay, hold on, girl, I'll just let you go. The swimmerettes are much longer. And
yeah, they're hidden up underneath there.
okay, she wants to.
Don't hurt yourself.
Okay, all right. So you'll see here that these are the swimmerettes, and they're much longer.
Yeah,
and this is where the eggs go underneath. And you've got here, you'll see that there's little clippers on the end of her actual last legs.
Points.
Correct. And this is what the other male had, just points.
And she's got clippers.
She's got clippers, and she's got a little bit of hair on her legs, but nothing compared to the old guy.
So she takes those clippers, clips off the sperm packet, and transfers it down to the eggs.
Just a little bit at a time. The sperm is actually put up on her chest, and she takes a little bit and puts on fertilizers.
That's amazing. Okay.
And this is, once again, a spiny lobster. You see the spines here, all the way around the outside, and these are very, very sharp.
Yeah.
Lobsters move away from you backwards.
And
That's how
that
they
lobster
propel.
is how big? How many pounds?
This one's about 3 pounds, maybe three pounds plus or minus.
And how old would you say that lobster is?
This is about maybe 15 years old.
Okay.
15 plus.
So if that were a 15-year-old male, he would be a super stud.
That's correct. And that's the ones that get around and really do
the
reproduction.
job.
They do the job well, yes. And there you go.
Now tell me a little bit about what you're gonna sacrifice these lobster and cut up the meat, but you're also gonna cut the legs off, right?
That's correct. The legs on these are very, very good to eat. The legs, and actually, I'm going to tell you now, on the very big lobsters, the horns and the pocket around the head, there's a lot of meat in there. On the smaller lobsters, there's not as much. But it's absolutely worth it to eat the legs here because, once again, Maine lobsters have claws. These guys don't. But the legs on these are very good. They're comparable to a king crab legs. And what I do is I will steam them also. And they take a little bit longer. The knuckles will take a little bit longer, about an extra 30 seconds to a minute steaming them. That's all. But the legs will be fine.
And you have a friend that makes a wonderful tomato-based pasta sauce, and she takes the legs, and why does she do that?
Very, very simple. What she does is, if I give them to her frozen, she thaws them out, and she'll put them in a tomato sauce, and she actually goes through and cooks it for many, many hours. She's Italian, like I am. I'm half Italian, and the other half's Italian. And one of the things that you do is you have the flavor of the shrimp or the lobster or whatever shellfish you're putting in there really emulates out into the gravy, as we call it, but most people call it sauce. And that is something that is really good when you're going to have shrimp scampi or something, and you want to turn around. I'll put you back here, girl. Okay, there you go. If you want to have some kind of pasta with seafood, it's a wonderful, we call shrimp gravy or lobster gravy. And there you go.
That's great.
Okay. All right.